You, Matt? Okay. You guys, everybody good? Appreciate you brave coaches playing, getting here in the middle. Everybody always stays over on the left side except for the courageous ones here. All right. Well, welcome, and appreciate this opportunity to chat with you guys again. This is such an awesome running camp. I tell everybody in Richmond about it. Try to get runners to sign up. And I say, if you're a serious runner, you should go to the Blue Ridge Running Camp. You guys do an awesome job with these kids. I just have a few slides. This is not any stretch my expertise. Um, I think I asked one of these coaches last year. I don't see him here. He's a college coach. I just thought that I've always been kind of more into minimalist shoes, ultras, lower stack height. It's just been my preference as a runner all these years. And I hate the Hokas. I hate the big fat mid stack heights. And so I kind of resisted learning more about it. But then I decided, okay, I really should dive into it. The coach said they're not going away. So there must be a good reason. Um, so I did a little bit of a deep dive, and I pulled up some information. I just thought I'd share a few things from a physical therapy standpoint about the actual carbon fiber version of these thick shoes, um, and some of the changes that have happened over the years. In case you haven't kept up with it, it's actually pretty amazing. Um, so the benefits you guys may already know is up as high as 4% improvement in running economy. It ranges from 2 to 4. Um, you get about 80% energy return on this new foam, the PEVA, that what it stands for, PEVA foam. ASICS came out with a new one that I think just this year. It's an alteration of this other chemical compound called TPU, which I think the Hokas and all are made of. Some of the more traditional, heavier shoe are made of TPU. It's a more durable midsole, lasts much longer, but it's not as springy or not as light. ASICS manipulated it chemically, and now they have an A-TPU. Gives you 88% return on energy return, which is significantly higher than the others. It's lighter, and they say it's actually more durable too. It's not going to break down as fast as some of these other midsoles. So Nike came out with that super shoe back in 2016. We all know the story. How do you say his name? Kipchoge broke 2 minute marathon. Of course, it was assisted and guided, but he did it in the Vaporfly. That was in 2019. And ever since then, world records are just dropping like flies. Every distance, track, long distance, middle distance, it's pretty crazy. So something like 80. Actually, there's the A6 Metaspeed Ray. That's the one I just pulled up. Found out recently. That's the light. It's only 4.5 ounces, which is coming from old school shoe guy. Um, so again, 4% energy return, running economy gain. 87.5% of the podiums are wearing these carbon fiber shoes in the country at the high level. I like this comment here in 2020. The World Athletics cap on midsole thickness. They're calling it preserving sport integrity. So 40 millimeters as high as we're allowed to go. I guess they presume there could be benefits going even fatter. Um, it bothers me as an old school guy because I think they already blew it out of the water in 2016 when they approved of the Vaporfly, which is an assisted shoe. But, you can debate that. It's too late now. It's not even worth it. All these new records are obviously assisted by a shoe. Um, so, anyways, this is kind of an interesting statistic I found in looking into these shoes. I don't know if y'all heard this, but women are actually benefiting more than men with these advanced shoes. The gap between men and women, especially in the longer distances, seems to be narrowing as the shoes have taken hold of the running world. Um, there's a couple of possibilities. One is one of the, I'll talk a little bit about this, but what the carbon fiber does is it stiffens the midfoot. So you have a decrease in energy loss. What these shoes do basically, they don't give you energy. All the energy is obviously coming from the running, but they decrease the loss of energy. And one of the places that we commonly lose is in the MTP joints, the forefoot and midfoot. Um, Women tend to be more flexible, so this is one of the theories. So maybe they're benefiting even more, so they have even less energy loss percentage-wise than men, or energy gain, I should say. Um, so that's kind of an interesting thing. The other thing is elite women tend to heel strike a little more common than the elite men. Men are more midfoot, forefoot strikers. These shoes do help heel strikers be a little more efficient. There's a decrease in ground contact time, and they get over the shoe by the shape of it. Get you over. That's probably true with the Hokas and the other big, massive shoes. They kind of propel you forward, so there's a little less time to contact with the ground, which is a benefit. You get flying in the air quicker. And here's the evolution of the midsoles. Started with this PVDA, the foam, T-Bax foam, and then the ATPU is the latest. And if it's as good as they say, um, it's probably going to take over in the carbon plate, unless ASICS has a patent on it. I'm not sure. Um, anyway, so they most of them are temperature sensitive, but the ATPU is supposed to be not. So cold weather, you guys noticed that or heard that? But cold weather can decrease the responsiveness of some of these foams. Something to think about is really hot weather can break them down much quicker. So kind of be aware of that if you're using them. So what the carbon fiber plate does, it is not itself a spring. Most of that kind of feeling of propulsion comes from the foam, that rebounding effect of the foam. Um, but it stiffens that midfoot, like I said. That's where you're getting a big energy benefit, the efficiency benefit from these carbon shoes. Um, just talking a little bit more about what the benefit, improvement in running economy, and look at the second square at the top. That's the biggest 48% decrease in your MTP foot work, how much work it has to do. That's where it's really having a big impact. The decrease in ground contact time, less vertical oscillation, and your calf muscles are not working quite as hard either, because the shoe itself is rolling forward. So as you go from here and you're transferring the weight over your foot, the deep calf muscle called the soleus is eccentrically controlling that motion. The shoe is doing it for you. So that muscle doesn't have to work as hard. And because of the little bit of extra boost, you don't get the gastroc having to work so hard at terminal stance. Again, another image of the MTP, the big blue down, shows you how much stress is taken off the MTP joints. But notice there is an increase in work. Nothing's for free, right? So it takes stress off the foot, but it's going to transfer the load up to the hip, quads, and so you have to be aware of that. So a runner really needs to be prepared to race in these and train in these types of shoes. You want them to be strong, powerful. And then most of you guys advocate weightlifting with your runners. Even powerlifting is valuable. So before, if one of the runners talks to you about wanting to wear carbon fiber for racing and workouts, just make sure they're not like a beginner runner, that they look strong, and you can tell that they've got the ability to take it. And you've got to be very gradual, increasing the mileage in them. Nobody recommends running in that all the time. Just using for racing and workout. That being said, this blew my mind. I have a runner right now. I haven't seen him in a month or since he's gotten better, but she was doing 80 to 90 miles a week, 50s in her 50s, all of them in the vapor fly, any mile. Like, and she's been doing it for like a year or two. So I warned her, and her injury is more up in the hip, so glute tendinopathy kind of thing. It was already starting to be on the mend by the time I got her. I just helped her build up those muscles again and recommended she spend some time in a different shoe. So that's true for everybody. But I thought that was crazy. That's just a woman who was literally born to run. She's been doing it for years, 80, 90 miles a week. She's in her 50s. So again, there's nothing, you don't get a free lunch for everything. With everything. There is a slight increase in metatarsal stress fractures with the carbon fiber shoe. And that happens when people get excited about it and they just start running and don't care themselves for it. So the foot does have to be able to withstand that little firmer impact that the carbon does. It also transfers the load slightly lateral, so the fourth and fifth metatarsal, these little bones in the feet tend to get fractured if you do too much too fast. The other loss, because the foot doesn't have to work as hard, you're going to atrophy your foot muscles even more than wearing nutrition. So that's been an issue that we've advocated as physical therapists for decades, that modern day running shoes, ever since the 70s, really, running shoes have gotten thicker, controlling, they advocate arch supports, everybody's got their feet supported all the time, so you atrophy. If you wear a back brace all day long, your back muscles would atrophy. So wearing the supported fixed shoe kind of makes your feet lazy. So these carbon plated shoes and the extra fat midsole shoes like Hoka's do the same thing to an extreme. So you've got to be more purposeful. Obviously, there's a benefit to these, so you're not going away. It's got to be more purposeful to strengthen your feet, spend time barefoot. I like weightlifting when it's safe. Don't crush your feet, but weightlifting in your socks or in a minimalist shoe, like y'all ever heard of Evo Barefoot? Yeah, that's a great thing. It's just like being barefoot, but you got a little protection. There's another shoe called Zero, spelled with an X. They make great weightlifting shoes, just low to the ground. And then, doing some barefoot running. That was a thing a while ago. Any coaches still advocate that with your runners? Some excellent. Everybody's still doing it. So that's excellent to hear. So that will help minimize and mitigate the effects. Here's something else. I didn't realize this, but some of these, I don't know what percentage, I was skeptics here. Some of these carbon plated shoes, have you noticed, are the rear foot and the forefoot are decoupled. It's like no bridge between the two. Where if there is one, it's very flimsy. So it's inherently unstable in the midsole. If you're a mid-foot, forefoot striker, no problem. You're going to land with the whole foot down. It's not going to be a problem. But if you're a heel striker and you get that version of a carbon plated shoe, it's a potential problem because you've got this heel rocker transitioning to the mid-foot rocker with nothing under it. So it's much more unstable, that foot strike, especially if somebody's overstrike. It's that anyways, but somebody's really heel striking way out here, it would be a very unstable shoe to be running on. So keep that in mind if kids are asking you questions about it. Not all of them are like that. Some of them bridge and keep them going. Carbon shoes. Okay, so I already talked a little bit about that, how it can kind of help heel strikers be a little more efficient. So it's kind of like anybody play baseball here, and you guys? I feel like carbon shoes in some ways are like little league metal, $300 metal bats. You can have horrible swing mechanics and still crush the ball just because the bat is helping. So I think we have to keep that in mind too, especially for some of the younger runners, maybe freshmen. Um, they might be getting some success, but not running with good form because the shoe is helping them have more success than they normally would. And then might make them a little more injury prone. So it's something to be aware of. Pretty much hit on most of this. Okay, so the recommended transition, there's like a 10 to 20% rule that's kind of goes across the board. When you start transitioning into a carbon plated shoe with the workouts, think about 10 to 20% miles increase per week. Don't exceed that. So they could do maybe one workout 1 week and then a couple workouts the next week. So with that. Um, yeah, I think more research is going to be done. I don't know how far this is going to go as far as shoe technology that is advancing running form and running speed. Um, I guess the sky's the limit. It's going to keep on trying to get better and better, faster and lighter, as long as I can make some money at it. So these are my final recommendations. Basically, you want to use these advanced AFTs. They kind of look it up. It's advanced foot technology shoes sparingly. Um, Work those feet so that you don't atrophy excessively. And you need to strengthen feet more purposefully than to keep your proximal muscles strong. And then you're going to have to do extra work on the calf and foot muscles to overcome the potential atrophy that can happen from using them excessively. Any thoughts or questions on yes? Okay. Yes. Yeah. So the spikes, don't they have carbon plated? Yeah, carbon plated spikes too, right? Yeah. But the stack height is significantly lower. Yeah. 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 I mean, it's the same basically. Keeping them lighter. I don't know if shorter distance shoes have a rule to stay small, but they tend to be more like a traditional training shoes. The track spike used to be nothing, right? The spikes. Well, now we've got a little bit of a foamy midsole to give you a spring, but they're they're benefiting spring just as much as they are um, yeah, long distance. Right. So how about that guy who just broke the mile record? I don't know what shoes he was wearing, but he's probably going to be selling a lot of shoes. Was that 240? I mean, 342? Yeah, that's crazy. Anyways, got to give credit to the shoes at least in somewhat. Partial probably because of that. All right. That's a great question. Exercising without equipment. One-legged squats is like the best thing. I brought a bench up here. If you could do split squats. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be elevated, actually. You can just kind of hold it. Pistol squats. I like to try to doing squats if you want it to be as functional as possible. I think it's better to have your leg behind instead of a pistol because you want to land squat down with the tibia and the torso or parallel with my leg. That's the image you want to see that mid stand for a runner. It should be kind of activated here, parallel tibia and torso parallel. So I'm trying to train into that. Yeah, you don't have to go that stronger than I am, go down to 60. Running is about 43. So be running specific. They're not. They can't get that. Just go to 50, not 20 years forever. You don't have to go 90 at all. And then incorporate some little plyometric jumps. So you can do one exercise we do a lot with runners who are starting to get back. We call them wave squats. So you do 4 really slow for that eccentric control, 4 fast, and 4 little hops. And it just fries. The butt will get so sore. 2 days afterwards, it gets the whole thing, the whole system. That's a great little series you can incorporate. We'll run through 4 sets like that. The band walks, of course, that most y'all probably do. The hamstrings are tough to because they're so strong on the glutes. One-legged bridges. You guys ever do incorporate those? Yeah, just on the ground, and those can actually activate pretty good, especially if you take them through emotion. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Adding weight, yeah. If body weight's pretty easy for you, then you definitely want to be adding weight, getting it stronger. You can do them in a squat rack if you have the equipment. Just getting a squat rack and work. I like one-legged, working on the balance, control, especially for runners, instead of the two-legged. The two-legged loads your back so much, so you can go half the weight and get an awesome workout with much less stress on the back. So, good questions. Don't forget the calf muscles. Those are very important power muscles for runners. I think they get neglected a lot of times. Any other thoughts or questions on that? Yeah, I wonder if it's if you're doing a lot of training and a huge stack height, and then you're doing track workouts, that variation, I think, could be the problem rather than the large stack height by itself. So I've always advocated, I try to tell the kids, especially if you're a shorter middle distance down the sprint, track workouts shouldn't be a big fat. I don't think, go minimal, let your feet work, and then you'll feel like you're Superman and you're super suit for race day. Because they encourage, the flatter soled shoe encourages good form, or midfoot strike, and everything. The big fat wheel that makes you want to heel strike. So it's just my own opinion on that. Track workouts. They're high school kids, you don't want them in spikes every day. But make the transition not so to that. I mean, the data shows it's actually less stress on the Achilles with carbon shoe itself. Yeah, I think so. So we're going to talk about, it was a good segue into some running injuries, um, common injuries, and then just ways you can start addressing it right away. I think there's a lot you guys can do as coaches with your kids immediately, not let it become a season influencing situation. Um, there's some data showing that running form will relate to stress injuries. That's the only thing running form has related to in all the data, thousands of studies. If you're a low cadence overstrider, you have a significant increase in stressing, like stress fractures, shin splints, stuff like that. None of these other common running injuries, IT band syndrome, tendinopathies, etc., relate to running form. So, having a higher cadence is one thing that you can look at. The only other thing that correlates with injury is that you've been injured before. So if a runner's had an injury, they're more likely to get injured again. That's in the research. That's the only thing that is really consistent. Um, so the one thing we can fix, of course, is running mechanics to try to minimize overstriding. Don't be fooled. Just because they're landing on the forefoot doesn't mean they're running with good form. So that's I call that twinkle toe running, when they're standing straight up and they're landing plantar flex down out front. It's still pretty inefficient running with a big braking action. So kind of keep that in mind. And you don't catch it until you put it on and get on your iPhone and videotape it, look frame by frame. Sometimes they look really good, but then you critically look at their landing and you can see that they're way out in front and they're some of the mass. And always harp on this a little bit, Brandon. You guys know the research that shows this was done with high school kids, probably college too. And sleep deprived, your injury rates go way up. So they put the direct correlation with lack of sleep and prior injuries. So keep that in mind. And as a physical therapist, this is something that I've worked with. I've been working with foot and ankle issues my whole career. About 30 years I've been training with orthotics and foot and ankle biomechanics. And the advent of the natural toe box revolutionized my treatment. Because I've had 60% of my patients that come in with some kind of foot problem. I haven't changed their shoes in the fingers. So shoes cause a lot of problems. And the best, most expensive running shoes, some of them are just killing your feet, depending on the shape of your foot. So as you can see on the image, this is your typical kind of tapered toe box. You can see how close the toes are kind of scrunched together. And that's a more natural toe box, Ultra being one of the shoes that makes a nice wide toe box. There's a couple others out there too. Popo, some of the minimal shoes. I noticed some of the carbon fiber shoes, thankfully, are pretty decent toe boxes. I don't know what Nike tends to use dress shoes, but so keep in mind when you're looking at shoes, make sure you get as wide a 4-foot toe box as you can. Leads to a lot of issues. Just some pictures. And of course, core weakness correlates a lot with running injuries. An example of a big pelvic drop, and that could be coming from the foot, could be coming from the glutes. But you videotape from multiple angles to try to figure out what's the source of something like that. That was a William and Mary runner, pretty strong runner, pretty big pelvic drop. The one muscle that I think relates to a lot of injuries, especially anterior knee pain and high school kids, adolescent female, tightness in the front. Okay, what are they doing all day long? They're sitting in class. What are they doing when they're not in class? If they're not in practice, they're on their phones, curled up in a ball like this. So they're always flexed. If there's one muscle you have them stretch, it's the hip flexor, which is the psoas, and you're doing like this. And then you got to get the rectus muscle, which is like quads. You have to extend the knee back first, and if you just do that, you'll have the rectus. So you can kneel, I think, on the side floor, but you go kneeling and then kneel up and kind of pat it surface. Does that make sense? Sometimes we'll hook onto something like this and drop down and that'll get the rectus. Right. Those two most important muscles to stretch. Football is sitting doing this like. All right, so good general rule when your athlete comes to you and says, after that workout, my knee hurts in the front, point right to the front tendon. And the last thing they want to do in the first 48, 2 to 3 days is to take some kind of anti-inflammatory like Advil or Aleve. They can ice it, but you don't want to stop the inflammation. Inflammation is an amazing system to heal those tendons. Um, so get out of that mindset. Ice in the lead for every ache and pain you get. Shin splints, terrible to take any kind of anti-inflammatory. So it's a bone injury. Slows down the healing process. You'll be amazed if you get these kids, keep them moving. If heels hurt, run them flat. They can bike, keep them biking, keep them moving, stay right on course. Exercise is the best thing. So it's relative rest from pain. Just keep it going and ice it when it's kind of sore. Um, there was a study done with I think it was field athletes, Achilles tendonitis in high school athletes. They had half of them continue their activity, but kept the pain level under a 4 out of 10. The other group was told stop. Group that was told to keep going got better much quicker. So it's just like our bodies heal with activity and exercise. So keep that in mind. Of course, you don't want to push through pain. There is a limit, but keep them going and get them on an elliptical. Coach has got one for his injured athletes. Muscle strains, um, those are just overdoing it. Not really prepared. When you're stretching a muscle that's injured, you got to be super gentle because it's inflamed, especially the quad. If you stretch injured quad, you're kicking off more inflammation in there, and you can end up that continues over and over. You can actually end up building bone in the quad. So after a couple of days of a quad strain, especially an adolescent male, that's what the anti-inflammatory probably would be in order. But I would wait a couple of days, see if it starts clearing up on its own. There's a thing called heterotopic ossification. It only happens in grown. It can happen in a female, but it's for some reason it's in boys, teenage boys. If they get a bad strain or a contusion, grow bone in the muscle, that's a problem. But other strains basically let it play out. Same rule as with tendon injuries. Um, Plantar fasciitis, that does happen. It happens in young people too, more common in older. Um, but it's basically a damage injury to the bottom of the foot that supports the arch. Um, and if you continue running with it on a flat surface, you generally do okay. It's the real speed workouts that will aggravate. So keep in mind, it's actually good to run through this if they can without aggravating it. Um, the most important thing is to stretch in the morning. Who's had plantar fasciitis? Anybody in here? All right. When's the most painful time? First thing in the morning. And the reason is we sleep with our feet plantar flexed, so the plantar fascia is in a slackened position. In a deep phase 4 sleep, that's when you heal. So you're stitching, working hard, healing it, and then when you stand up, you just rip all that nice fresh on the plantar fascia. This is an analogy with if I sewed a hole in my shirt down here, as soon as I raised my arm, it would just kind of rip, right? So that's kind of what's happening. You stretch, teach kids, stretch before you ever put your foot down. Hey, Jeff. Put the foot down in the morning, and literally it will start going away within a week or two. And guess what? I've got to plug in my laptop and I'm ready to get my power on. Hey, Matt, where's the outlet up here? about that, guys. We went back and forth, like doing it up there or doing it down here. And any questions on certain specific injuries? We back up plantar fascia. The question is if you use a tighter shoe, does it happen wrong? If you're tighter in the toe box, yes. Um, because when the big, and this was a study done, a vascular study, which is really interesting. When the big toe is pushed over into a tight tapered shoe, it puts tension on the inside of the arch, right where the blood supply comes in and dives underneath. So it actually cuts off some of the blood supply to the bottom of the foot. And they demonstrated that with arteriogram. So they're actually visualizing the fluid, the blood flow through. And when they pushed the toe over, it kind of pinched it off, restricted it. And they think that tight toe box could make you more vulnerable to injury because you're not getting the blood supply to recover. That's a good question. And it's caused from somebody who's got too mobile of a foot, like somebody who's real floppy and just constantly slamming and pronating too much over on it. And some of it's from a real heavy heel strike. This probably doesn't happen as much because the shoes are so soft now, but landing on that heel, you can actually get a bone bruise. So it's not the plantar fascia, it's actually the heel itself. So here's some exercises that you can do to prevent plantar fascia. So if your muscles are strong in your feet, you will have be much less likely to injure your plantar fascia because the muscles will be taking the load. That old guy just standing there, he is, he's should be barefoot, but just tip forward, hold yourself up with your toes. So as I'm leaning forward, I'm not going up onto my toes like that, making my calf look. You just move forward until all the toes are pressing into the ground. That kicks in this very important muscle called quadratus plantar that I'm going to move much. So try that sometimes. Just stand and kind of lean forward and feel like the foot's almost cramping because that muscle is working so hard. I call them ski jumpers. They go leaning right there. Ski jumper would lean forward. Having your toes separate, if you've had problems over the years, if your shoe either starting to point like an arrow, you can get these toe spacers to stretch them back out. And then I wear toe socks in all my shoes now. Once you start wearing them like that, you never want to go back. You feel like your foot is just constrained. So you get much more proprioception and feedback from your toes when they're individually positioned inside the shoe. I'm a big fan of that. I think it can help prevent a lot of issues because your foot muscles are more engaged with the toe socks. IT band syndrome is one of those complicated injuries that are multifactorial. There's never just one thing. It's how much control do they have of the pelvis? Are they rolling in too much from the foot? The camber of the road can be a factor because it's changing the mechanics one way or the other. But it's a very annoying, very painful condition with friction across the lower knee, just the IT band. Sometimes it's a tightness issue, but it's usually a weakness issue. Everybody knows probably know the IT band, TFL stretch for this muscle up here, but it's usually more of a strength problem or a mechanical problem. It's something that they can address right away is get the glutes working. What's a really common cause of this is the crossing over. And so they're running here, and that one leg lands up on like almost to the other side of the center. And then they hear, boom, I see this very often when I videotape video analyze runners. And it's usually distance runners who run track, not just marathons, but I think it's the repetition constantly going left for miles on the track. So coaches, I think if might be wise if you all don't do this already, is to spend some workouts going in the opposite direction. That is such a common thing to see the crossover. That can lead directly tied to the problem with one levels. Tendinopathies. We talked briefly about that. What's the thing you don't want to do? Take drugs right away. If it's chronic, a week later, 2 weeks later, then it might make sense to start taking some NSAIDs because that can become part of the problem. But normally, you just let it play out. You exercise it. If it's really bad, isometrics has gotten a lot of research recently. There's a physical therapist named Jill Cook. He's kind of the guru in tendinopathy research. And it's pretty intensive isometrics. So they're recommending, if you can tolerate it, up to 70% of your max, and you hold for 30 seconds. Do like 5 reps of those a couple times a day. If you're doing a squat, I would say that your patella tendon, you can do a one-legged hold like this. And you want to be at about 70% of what your maximum is that you could do, and hold still for 30 seconds. You can do 5 reps of those. You're also going to do extension machine for the patella tendon. Calf raises, basically, you would just elevate the heel and hold. You want to be more aggressive, you do one-legged squat rack. So if you got a chronic tendon problem yourself or one of your kids, get them doing the isometrics. It really makes a big difference. And it's every day. So the same kind of anterior knee pain. That's your biomechanical knee pain. Probably the most difficult thing to treat. And it's when because your kneecap flops around very freely in there, there's all kinds of mechanical issues that can happen up here at the hip or down at the foot that can cause your patella to not glide right in the groove and lead to pinching of a fat pad in there and grinding of the patella. So that's probably one of the more stubborn conditions. But I found stretch, especially in youth, developing this, if you stretch that rectus femoris, it really seems to help. I think some of the problem is coming from tightness in that 2-joint quad muscle. So remember to extend the leg first, back like that, and then bend, and you get the rectus really well. Since place, I talked a little bit about, again, the drugs, rest from impact activities, riding elliptical or swimming, but they may be able to run on a soccer field. But maybe the guide when it comes to that. Some soccer building surface sometimes helps keep their mileage up. But again, try not to stop everything if you can. If they're diagnosed with stress fracture, then obviously they can't run anymore, but there's a lot of low impact activities they can do. Biking, swimming, pool workouts. So posterior tip tendonitis is, anybody ever had that? It's pain right in the arch. That is a very important muscle that helps hold the arch up. And when it starts getting stretched out or damaged, it can happen. This is definitely a little bit more common in older folks, but young people with tight calf muscles can crank on this posterior tib and overwork it. Stretching the calf is so important because when your gastroc is tight, it forces your foot into pronation while you're running. And when you're forced over into pronation late in the gait cycle, your posterior tib is just hanging on for dear life. It's trying to pull the arch up, and it's got the whole full body weight throwing the arch down. It's a tug of war with every stride. So tight calf muscle, especially the gastroc, the most superficial one, the terminal stance. And then to strengthen it, it's a weird calf raise, basically, toed in, and you go up and out like that because it raises the arch and it plantar flexes the foot. So if you can do an up and out strengthening, going up and out, you're doing the isometrics because it is a tendinopathy, that would be good for it. But the big thing is check to see if their calf is tight. If you put their leg straight and they can't pull their foot back 15 degrees, that'll be a big part of the problem. Another quick and dirty test that you can do, put their foot 4 inches away from a wall. They should be able to lunge, touch their knee to the wall without the heel coming up, 3 to 4 inches away. So that's another quick test to see. Ankle mobility is a big problem with the injury. So proper calf stretching, if you just do your standard stretch, like the guy on the bottom here, there's a bunch of different ways we could cheat. The foot will turn out, arch collapses, and you see people doing this. It doesn't do them any good. You got to have the arch elevated while they're stretching. Otherwise, you're just torquing that posterior tendon, you're torquing the plantar fascia. So if kids are doing calf stretching, coach them to raise the arch, and the foot that they're stretching, roll to the outside, and then hold the stretch. You do it yourself, you'll feel a radical difference. Slant boards are probably the best way because you don't cheat, hard to cheat on a slant board, or I like the foot up against the vertical like this. You also can't cheat. Standard, people call it runner stretch up against the wall. It's too easy to just let the foot flop. So be aware of that. Anybody had piriformis syndrome in here? That pain in the deep in the butt. That can be from a back injury. Adolescent kids who have stress fracture in their spine, they'll feel it down in the buttock. Can be from overworked glute muscle. You know, that right now on the left side, so you get both. But yeah, if you camber the road, leg rolling in, crossing over, there's a lot of different things that can cause these deep rotators in the hip to get injured. And piriformis is the biggest one in there, and it's associated, as you can see in the picture, that yellow thing coming out right there is the sciatic nerve. So if that piriformis is tight, it's going to pinch on that sciatic nerve, and you're going to start getting tension symptoms down the leg. Everybody probably knows the piriformis stretch is stretching up and over. You also need to figure out mechanically what's going on. They tend to overpronate, or if they're running on the slope of the road too much, or check for crossing over for that side if they're running straight. Those could be an issue with that. Massage is one of the best things for it. I like using a massage gun all around the glutes and all that. So metatarsalgia is a real common problem in runners, pain in the arch of the foot. And number one cause of that is toe box being too tight. So open up your toe box, get toe socks. It's unbelievable. Speaking from personal experience myself, but also treating hundreds and hundreds of people with metatarsalgia. Sometimes you need a little metatarsal pad to form the horizontal arch. There's actually a small horizontal arch in the front of the foot. Older runners may have lost that. It might have collapsed down some. So a little net pad in there helps form that. But the number one cause, especially if it's a kid or a younger person, it's the toe box problem. Cross training, yeah, we know this. I just want to re-emphasize it. Medical community often will say, just stop running, especially non-sports medicine doctors. So hopefully your schools have some kind of sports med program, athletic trainers. They can steer you to a sports medicine minded physician when your kids are injured. Highly recommend it. PCPs, I love them. They're worth their weight in gold, but they don't think sports medicine. They think they've got too much going on. So you got to get them somewhere where they can direct them, not just say stop running. That's just too easy, and it's not going to help the athlete get back in the time. So, highly recommend getting them to a qualified doctor and physical therapist to direct their recovery. So it can be an active recovery, not not just stopping them and do drugs. So there's some notes on there when you should definitely send them to a doctor if they're not responding to your advice and exercises and the athletic trainers. Um, then put a few things in there. Limping or even walking is a big one. That's a sign of a pretty significant stress, potentially, especially in a young person. And back pain, arching backwards can be a stress fracture. So something to be aware of. All right. So that's those are the kind of the most common injuries I see in physical therapy. Probably try to give you all a few pointers to see if you can address it within the training room with them or in school. Um, Questions you have about that stuff? Sir? Okay. Um, so the calf, I can see in running, I can see the calf and the glute synergistically working. To, right, that's for sure. Hamstrings get overlooked. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's activating the glute is probably what we do 75% of the time with some of these runners, especially um, as you get a little bit older. If you have a desk job or whatever, there's something that shuts our glutes down. And Jeff is absolutely right. The calf muscle is going to overwork the hamstring. I see high hamstring injuries because of the glute not doing their job. So other muscles are taking up the slack and overworking. Um, so I found one of the best ways to activate the glute is the one-legged bridge, just getting it down, and you all can picture that, right? I like it elevated here, and driving up like that. Doing it on a Swiss ball is really good. You can weight it here in the front, and the other is that split squat. You can activate the foot, create a short foot here, barefoot, and then get the glute working right here, sitting back, so that the tibia and the torso are parallel with one another. And you're doing this barefoot, so the foot and ankle complex is also working as you're activating the glute. And then the last component is doing that little hop I was showing you earlier. I like to do this one in bare feet, so that the foot and ankle complex is activated while engaging the glute. So that's a great question and a common problem for sure. Looks like the kids are here, so guess we should wrap it up. You're welcome.